to everyone. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Welcome to this event with Vice President Věra Jourová, Vice President for Values and Transparency in the Commission, on the subject of the European Democracy Action Plan that was presented yesterday. My name is Richard Youngs. I work in Carnegie Europe. Carnegie is organizing this conversation together with the European Partnership for Democracy and the Open Government Network. So thanks to colleagues from those organizations for putting this conversation together. Our three organizations have been working on European democracy for some time. We all know that European democracy has had a challenging decade. European democracy has been facing many challenges, complex challenges that operate at many different levels. Amongst analysts, there are ongoing debates about just how serious the challenges are, what is really driving them, and what some of the remedies might be. So at the analytical level, there are many unresolved debates. At the policy level, both EU institutions and national governments have begun to devise different remedies and solutions to democracy's malaise. These policy responses are many, they operate at many different levels, but clearly one of the most significant initiatives is the new European Democracy Action Plan. So we're very grateful to the Vice President for joining us today. She's been working with her team during 2020, drawing up the action plan. Expectations are high in what this might achieve. Of course, the action plan does not cover every single aspect of democratic politics, and we will not try to cover the whole field of democracy in this conversation, but clearly the plan does home in on a number of extremely significant elements. So we're very grateful to the Vice President. She will share her thoughts on the action plan with us and then debate with the audience her hopes and perhaps also her concerns about how her and her team aim to take forward the implementation of the plan and perhaps begin to expand the scope of their democracy work as well. We only have an hour, so I will hand the floor straight over to the Vice President. I encourage the audience to submit questions to the Vice President, either through Slido, through the YouTube chat function, or they can email brussels@ceip.org. So we look forward to your comments and questions. And with that, Vice President, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Richard. Good morning to everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you and to share with you how we want to shape the digital agenda for the maybe next 20 years. We have ambitious plans. We have the plans how to set the rules for the digital sphere while keeping the values like freedom of speech untouched. And this is a very ambitious and difficult task. And I have the first opportunity today to have a discussion, the public discussion, because I only presented it to the media yesterday. So it's a great opportunity for me. Well, yes, yesterday we adopted the European Democracy Action Plan, where we are focusing on the risks and complex issues relating to democracy in the EU, which Richard, you rightly pointed out, is under stress test, at least the last decade. And this was even amplified in COVID time. So I think it's a very, very topical thing and a team to cover it. The Democracy Action Plan is foreseeing it is a real plan for the next several years to come, when the new initiatives which are foreseen in the plan will be hopefully done or accomplished. And it's good to read this action plan in conjunction or together with the Digital Services Act, which will be adopted in I think 2 weeks' time, still this year, where we will adopt the legally binding rules, especially relating to accountability and transparency of the platforms and of digital sphere in general. The complex issues and challenges we want to address, just to name some: rise of extremism, especially online, lack of transparency and accountability of online platforms, insufficient application of rules relevant for elections in the digital world, over-regulated offline campaigning, and none or only some fragmented rules for online campaigning in the time when, while we see it everywhere, the political marketing has been shifted to a large extent from offline to online. We have seen interference in the democratic processes through the coordinated waves of disinformation. We have seen the algorithms used in online space, which in fact do not enable the horizontal democratic debate. And everything happening online is something which the people, individual people, the citizens cannot always know what's happening, what's there for us. Are we manipulated or not? We want to shed more light into what is ongoing in digital sphere. We do not want to prohibit anything. We do not want to remove disinformation, but we want the people to know what's happening. Yeah, so we are giving better chance to the citizens to understand and to also take active participation in democratic processes. We are focusing in the plan on three main things: electoral processes, integrity of the processes. I do believe that we need to protect democracy by guaranteeing that all the elections organized in the EU will be fair and free, because this is the basic pillar of democracy. The second thing, we want to strengthen the media, because you will perhaps agree with me that without free and strong media, again, very key pillar of democracy will be weakened and missing. And so we need to empower media and strengthen their role. It's for the first time the EU is so much focusing on protecting media, for a very strong reason. Media are under extreme pressure, economic and political pressure. And the last thing, which I indicated already, we are now also planning how to minimize or decrease the impact of disinformation. Let me briefly go through those three things. Elections and elections laws date mainly from the offline reality and definitely are not fit for the online world. But as I said before, political campaigning has been already shifted and moved to online, and we need to close the gap in how we to close the gap between the rules for offline and online. I will therefore, for the next year, prepare legislation on transparency in online political advertising. We are convinced that the people must know why they are seeing some political ad and that it is political ad, who paid for it, how much, what micro-targeting criteria were used. And we are big fans of new technologies. Yeah? I want to be well understood. Technologies are great for when they serve the people. When the technologies are used for manipulation rather than emancipation, it's a wrong thing, and we have to react on that. So that's why I will again mention micro-targeting criteria. We will look into how to, if and how to limit the use of micro-targeting for political campaigning. It was what I said many times after Cambridge Analytica case came out or burst out. Suddenly we saw that the private data the people share with the platforms have been used for political gains, for the purpose of political marketing, and the micro-targeting which was used in that case was very difficult to swallow, because in fact the method which is used for selling shoes or vacuum cleaners suddenly was clearly used for selling politics and politicians. And here comes the gloomy picture that we don't have only consumers in the EU. And I love consumers, and I worked so hard for European consumers over 5 years of being consumers commissioner, but we need to protect the citizens and citizens' rights, and the citizens' right to cast free vote and informed choice, not manipulated choice. So this is the philosophy behind that we want something important for the people to cast their free vote. And so coming back to our legislators' reality, I plan to do this, to come with the rules for political campaigning in the third quarter of the next year. There will be a huge public consultation and impact assessment. I will consult with the experts on elections and on political marketing and on marketing as such, because we really need to understand in the biggest possible detail what's going on and what has to be addressed. Why such carefulness? Because in EDAP we are not only tackling with a very explosive issue of what is the truth and what is the lie. I will come to it in a minute. But also what is political content and what is not political content. Yeah? And we have to be very careful not to minimize or diminish the public debate. And so be with us. I will need also the consultation of the people maybe who are watching now the YouTube channel, because this will be a very important moment. On the media's situation now is critical. It's a paradox of COVID. There are many paradoxes now, but the more we need the media to provide information, the more we need the people to have access to information and facts, the less the media are able to do their job, because they are more and more under political pressure, under economic pressure. The readership is going up and the revenues are going down, and they are under increased threat. And we have a statistical figures now regarding, of course, the online harassment, but also physical attacks. For instance, during the protests, we have several hundreds of attacks on journalists doing their job in different protests in 11 member states. So we need to do more to guarantee security of journalists, and to also be better prepared against the abusive litigation, because this is also a trend that we have more and more such litigations against the journalists. And we have to do that together with the member states, as well as the previous chapter on political advertising, because speaking about security of journalists, well, to guarantee security of people, it's the task for the member states. So we will issue next year a recommendation which will be very concrete, which will summarize all the possible threats which are turning against the journalists and diminishing their ability to do the job. And we have to join forces and to do more. We will address the law enforcement authorities in the member states. We will also continue financing legal aid to the journalists. So we will also finance, I guess, more shelters for the journalists who are under direct physical threats and so on. At the same time, we have to watch closely the implementation of the new legislation. We have the audiovisual directive, which came into force this year. This is mainly about transparency of ownership. The people should know who own the media and who is addressing them by the news. And also the copyright rules, which will come into force next year in June. It's connected with the economic situation of the journalists. Well, they have to be paid for their work. And it's the core thing in the copyright directive, which should be implemented in full next year, that if their work, their products, their articles are placed online, they have to be paid for that. It sounds obvious, no? But it's not the case. And because we are in the situation when the money of the advertisers is also moving to online, I saw some figures that 50% of all the advertisers' money is now paid to Google and Facebook. Well, it's varying, and we have to somehow correct the business model, which goes directly against the independent media, especially the regional and local media. Last chapter, disinformation. Well, here I come to the most maybe controversial but very important topic. I want to say at the beginning that the Commission is not the arbiter of what is true, what is lie, and we will not be. You can imagine how tempting it might be to be the commissioner of the truth. And I will resist, because there must not be any arbiter of the truth. Not the Commission, nor the member states, neither the platforms. When I heard Mark Zuckerberg in American Congress, who said that he will not be the one to check the truth in political advertising, I was relieved that he doesn't have this ambition to do that. Because Facebook and other big tech, they already grabbed so much power and so little responsibility. And on top of this, if we give them more power to be the arbiters of the truth, I think it would be the end of democracy and of many, many other things. So we are proposing for disinformation, which is not illegal content, but harmful content. We are proposing to make stricter rules for monitoring and action on foreign influence. So this is the work for our External Action Service. Later today, I will speak to the Deputy Secretary General of NATO, because, for instance, from Russia, we hear that disinformation is part of the military doctrine, which is applied in Europe. So we would be extremely naive and irresponsible if we do not react on that. On disinformation, so we are announcing that we will apply sanctions in case of very intensive attacks. We will work on this with Joseph Borrell, who is our external action high representative, and his teams. We will upgrade the code of practice against disinformation, which is a voluntary scheme. We want more platforms to join. At this moment, we have six biggest ones. We want to improve the functioning of the code of practice, and also the code of conduct against hate speech. But I don't want to mix up disinformation and hate speech. These are two different categories. Hate speech is illegal content. It's illegal, declared or recognized in criminal laws in all the member states. That's why I think it's the right thing to say what's illegal offline must be illegal online. Illegal content like hate speech, child pornography, and terrorism will be addressed by the Digital Services Act, because we want the platforms to act against illegal content proactively and to contact also the law enforcement authorities. So disinformation is another story. We want to deploy more fact checkers and professional journalists. We want to increase the potential of the facts, because the facts are core here. The facts belong to everybody, objective facts. The opinions are, for me, I own my own opinions, and they should be untouchable. And so the fact checkers should be more proactively working. Also, the sectors have to defend their facts. We see it now in COVID, because the health sector is now in the center of everything happening around quarantines and the vaccination. So the sector of health have to occupy the space with the facts, and the people are hungry for the facts, because this is about health and life. And if the sector does not provide trustworthy, reliable, and understandable information, then the disinformation will occupy the space. Yeah, so that's why I am mentioning especially the facts parameter, because we do not want to minimize or diminish the public debate, where there might be many opinions which we do not like, but they have the right to exist and to be distributed. I know I speak too long, but I sit very often in the European Parliament in the middle. Here I see the mainstream parties where I belong to. I belong to Liberal Party. Here is far left, far right, or the parties which have the approaches and opinions I do not like as a liberal, but as somebody who is defending the freedom of expression, I feel obliged to protect their right to say the things I don't like. And this is also very, very visible in our European Democracy Action Plan. I can answer questions how we want to deal with this information. I understand they have to be shorter, which I didn't manage already to be shorter. Last comment, we use in the Democracy Action Plan the term co-regulation. Now we have self-regulation. The platforms committed to the code of practice. We are monitoring. We have constant dialogue with them. What should be improved? Where we see insufficient action, especially in some member states with languages, European languages. Not everybody speaks English, and so there are numerous issues still to discuss. But it is the decision of the platforms to commit for fight against disinformation. So before we have the Digital Services Act in force, which will be in several times, because it is the legislation which needs to go through the legislative process. So before we have these rules in force, fully enforced in the member states, we have to continue this voluntary schemes, and then the co-regulation will come. And co-regulation means that we will have obligations and rules which oblige all the platforms, not only selected ones, to do some tasks to minimize the impact of disinformation and also hate speech and other things. So this is a process. I truly believe we are not killing freedom of speech. We are not killing innovations in digital. I believe that we are targeting the risks, and I am ready to cooperate because cooperation is a core thing here. There are a lot of things for the member states, for the digital platforms, for the advertisers, for the civil society. So that's from my side for the moment. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Vice President, for that very rich overview. I think that gives an impression of just how much is included in the plan and how busy your 2021 is likely to be. I wonder if I can start off the conversation just asking your views on what you think might best help implementation of the plan and what might hinder it. The text of the plan mentions in several places that its success will depend on proactive cooperation from member states and national authorities. I wonder what you feel you're most looking for from member state authorities, and if you are worried that any obstacles might hold up a fully effective implementation of the plan.
I might give you an empty declaratory phrase that we need to cooperate on it, because as I said before, I cannot do it myself, or the Commission cannot do it itself. But to be precise, we are planning a legislation. It will be Digital Services Act. It will be the political marketing directive. It will be the initiative against the abusive litigation against journalists. It will be directive about European political parties and financing of political parties. So I could continue. There are some other pieces of legislation foreseen. And here we need the European Parliament and the Council, the member states, to cooperate on the best possible and quickest possible adoption. Under best possible, I mean that the legislation proposed by the Commission will not be watered down. And what I especially would not like to see, and I hear it very often from the member states, that they have specificities and there should be some space for different approaches. I am afraid that when it comes to digital sphere, we face the same kind of issues and the same urgency in all the member states in the same way. Yeah. And by the way, very similar to what we see in the United States also. Yeah. So ADAPT is this action plan is also, I think, very promising step for maybe stronger cooperation with US. So for the legislation, I need the good reaction from the co-legislators. We need to have the budget done for the EU, because we want to fund a lot of things which are in the plan. I mentioned the support of the media. I didn't mention we need to increase media literacy and critical thinking in our society. And here we plan a lot of funding. We want to engage the creative industry, culture sector. Also, of course, we researchers, we want to put the topic of critical thinking and media literacy in our Erasmus programs, yeah, which is a huge program enabling the young people to study. The society is not resilient enough. Yeah? Digital revolution invaded into our lives and brought a lot of good water to drink and bad water which is flooding us with bad things. Yeah? So we need the society to be more resilient. And so that's the funding. And the last thing, we need to engage with the member states more regarding the foreign interference, because this is connected also with the security of our member states and our citizens. So there is a lot of work for everyone, but I do my best to explain everywhere where it's needed, what we plan and why it is important, because for many this is still a toxic topic, and the accusations of censorship are coming from many places, and I will always deny that this is not it.
Obviously, your priorities for the moment for next year will be focused on the plans for the new legislation that you ran us through. But I was also interested that the text makes the case that this is not the end of the story. The plan is the kind of beginning, and you've mentioned this in previous interviews, that you hope that this serves as a platform from which you can build a broader program of work on democracy. I wonder if you can just give us an idea of what kind of things you would hope might come about in a broader sense from the plan. I guess you've already begun to mention issues of critical democratic thinking and broadening engagement in that sense. But I wonder if you have anything kind of more concrete on the agenda for next year of how the plan can open up a pathway to the Commission working on other aspects of democratic politics.
If you want it concretely next year, I can give you maybe, if I remember the whole list of the things which will come. But this is a long distance run. This is a process, and looking at it from broader perspective, the protection and defense of democracy is a never-ending process, because several years ago, I think we were very naive. We thought that democracy is some kind of perpetuum mobile, or that it is indeed the end of history, that everybody will recognize without any questions that democracy is the best ever system. And it is not the case. We see in many member states that from 30 to 40% of people are dissatisfied and uncertain, and they feel the injustice and uncertainty, and they blame democracy for that, which is not delivering them what they need. So this is a process ahead of us. This plan is not the only thing we are doing, but I think it is an important step forward to start with the next year's initiative. So the political marketing, political advertising directive will be one of them. Then the initiative which I would like to see as a directive next year on against the abusive litigation. This is impatiently awaited, especially by the media, but also by human rights defenders, because we see more and more litigations when either the state or some big corporation or somebody extremely rich and influential goes to the court and complains against the weaker ones, which are the media. Media can be very influential, and they have to be responsible and professional. I also want to stress this, but there are a lot of cases with groundless arguments, and at first sight something which is meant to harass and deprive the media of the money. One example, Daphne Caruana Galizia, the journalist who was assassinated in Malta 3 years ago. In the moment of her assassination, her family continued to face 47 litigations, most of them in UK, because you can lodge the complaint or lodge the case to the court where the impact of the text of the journalist is seen. So in digital sphere, it can be theoretically everywhere in Europe. When I write an article, it's distributed everywhere, then I can theoretically, according to the current rules, go to all the member state courts. So that's why I want to look into how to minimize the abusive use of these court cases. I simply do not want to see justice turning against the freedom of speech, which might be the case if we do not do something. But sorry, I am again too long. There are several other initiatives, recommendations to the member states regarding the ownership, the security of journalists, initiatives regarding more transparency of media ownership, several other things. So the engine will go on.
I'm just looking here. We have a large number of questions coming in. I wonder if I can try and put some structure into this and perhaps group the questions around the main thematic strands of the plan, perhaps media, political ads. Then we have a cluster of questions on kind of information, disinformation, transparency, and then some on the broader role of civil society organizations as well. On the media, for example, we have Michael Ogier from the Global Forum for Media Development saying great focus on media pluralism, but what do you think can be done in a very concrete sense to help the survival of very locally based, non-profit, independent journalistic outlets, where perhaps member states are not doing enough to help those kind of independent outlets survive? You talked about perhaps funding more shelters and offering more generic capacity building. But
this is, I understand, this is not about a question of relating to security, but this is about bread and butter, no? Whether they can survive. This is economic pressure they are under, and we already see, well, what we see everywhere, the shops are closing, going bankrupt, and so the media are in a very similar situation. What concretely can be done? As you know, we already released or made available, I don't remember how many, but some billions of euros to the member states to use for the quick recovery or quick financial support to different sectors, especially to small and medium enterprises. And the Commission advised very strongly the member states to use part of the money to support the media, to help them financially to be able to survive. This money should serve to help media as economic actors. This money is meant to help them to survive economically, but not the money which seeks to buy their editorial gratefulness, if you understand what I mean. Yeah, this is not the money which is intended to buy propaganda or to buy the service. So several member states followed our advice. I will mention Denmark. They earmarked 24 million euros for direct help to the media. I think Sweden, also in Italy, we see some dedicated program. So the member states also being under the pressure of the media sector, they are supporting with also using the EU money. I again was alarming the ministers of culture this week. I had a conference with them that the media need help, and they will need help next year. There is relatively good money in the recovery fund. There is money for loans, for investments. I believe, I only hope that the procedures for this money will not be extremely difficult, because media have never been the traditional applicants for the EU and state money. Yeah? So I hope the money will not be killed by bureaucratic obstacles, if I am concrete enough on that.
Very concrete. I have a whole cluster of questions coming in on political ads. I'm going to have to be a bit selective here, but we have, for example, Nienke Palstra from Global Witness getting to the kind of nub of the issue of how the Commission, asking how the Commission will define political content, because that will obviously have quite serious implications for actors other than political parties, non-traditional political actors, issue-based campaigns. Obviously a very key issue there. Eva Simon from Civil Liberties Union for Europe asks, apart from what you've talked about, self-regulation, co-regulatory mechanisms, do you see any possibility to create and enforce transparency rules concerning micro-targeting political ads? And linked to that, Julian Jarausch from Strengthening the Digital Public Sphere asks what can be done about content, not only at the EU level, but at the national level, and these support mechanisms that you talk about in the plan at the national level, what form might they take? Now, there's quite a lot of ground there, but all around these kind of central questions of regulating political ads.
I will try to be short. How to define political content? Well, of course, we have had numerous very excited debates in the Commission with my team, with the experts, with the platforms themselves, the issue of how to define political ads and issues ads. Well, it will stay with us now in the next 6 months before we finalize the work on the political advertising. And I want to ask everyone who has an opinion on that, share it with us. We will open consultations and we will need to have much better understanding if and how to define that. The highly probable version or the way or the solution we will take is that we will focus on the paid or sponsored political content. Yeah. And not to catch or to touch the rest, which for some might be not sufficient, yeah, because it can be very narrowed. But I will be extremely careful not to touch or minimize or somehow hamper the freedom of expression. What's political, what's not political? Is this debate political we have here? Well, yes, it is, of course. Although I always say that our action plan, democracy action plan, is not ideological. It's not left side or right side. Of course, the debate is political. So I would not like somebody to come and say, wait a minute, it is not right what you said. I will kill it. we cannot go in this direction. So political ads, sponsored content, but we will continue the debate. Enforced rules on micro-targeting, yes, we will. Definitely, it's my ambition to look into this properly. And for the political advertising, and especially for the short periods before the elections, we want to address micro-targeting, by defining some limitations which will be legally binding. Yeah, because I speak here about legislation. The downside of it is that I speak about the pan-European rules, which, as for the electoral laws or rules, have to stay on European level. So we will recommend the member states to apply similar rules for the political marketing in case of national elections and where the competence of the member state is. Support mechanism. National, I think I also replied on that. On political marketing and elections, Europe can only legislate on European level. And everything which will be mirrored in the national legislation will be welcomed. And we will work very intensively with the member states to have an agreement on very similar, if not the same rules.
Seeing a kind of follow-up, slightly more specific from colleagues in both Avaz and Algorithm Watch, asking your view on, slightly beyond the question of political ads, how you see the transparency requirements the plan talks about taking shape for the platforms, in particular where risks are identified to fundamental rights, then what can be done to actually ensure compliance with that, as it were. That reflects actually a concerns we've had from a number of people coming in.
Of course. There are two mantras in EDAP: freedom of speech and transparency. And these two go together because for many months we were discussing how and whether to regulate the content. I don't speak about illegal content again, yeah? Let's not mix up with hate speech and child abusive material. And we came into the decision, we came with the decision that our focus will be on the behavior of the actors and on transparency. In other words, that the platforms have to reveal how the debate is structured, who pays for what are the sources of some kind of harmful information or disinformation, and simply shed more light into what is happening online. Because we already encountered this issue when we were working on GDPR, that the people send their private data to the black box, yeah, losing absolutely the control over their privacy and their identity. This is similar thing, yeah, because if I am part of the game and I don't know the rules, but the rules are influencing me in my decision making in my everyday life, there is something wrong. We need to know more. And we already indicated the way we want to do it in this plan. You will read a lot about that in the Digital Services Act, because here more accountability, which we require from the platforms, goes hand in hand with more transparency. And you will definitely see this in our legislation on political advertising.
I'm being very selective here because we're nearly out of time, but I think it's worth saying we do have a cluster of concerns also, echoing your point about transparency. So, for example, Helen Derbyshire, obviously Director of Access Information Europe, asks what more can be done to improve transparency in the form of access to documents and decision-making, etc., at the national level, where perhaps member state governments are not being as forthcoming as they might be. And then Claire Persham from EU Disinfo Lab, again, reflecting a broader set of concerns we're hearing, specifically on COVID and public health, following up the document from earlier this year, what more might be done to provide good quality, accurate information in the next stage of the management of the pandemic. So kind of broader transparency issues and the public health issue.
Because for the transparency, we have it quite well in our hands on European level. Speaking about the Digital Services Act, which will come next days, and you will see that there is a big impetus on that, and these are the rules for the whole Europe. Also, for the disinformation pact, or the code of practice against disinformation, we will push the platforms to do more and to be more transparent already now before we have the legislation. And again, if they make this commitment, it should be valid and applied everywhere in Europe. So these are the things which are based on good consensus with the member states, but where we do not need their decision. If you understand, yeah, we cooperate with the member states on these codes as well, but it's for the platforms. More transparency on national level. Well, yes, I don't want to go now into the criticism of some member states where we do not see 100% willingness to enable the media access to information. I don't like that, but I don't want this to be controversial. But it is a phenomenon of recent years that the cabinet politics and not non-transparency belongs to the toolbox of some governments, and there must be bigger pressure from the side of the citizens and also the parliaments and the civil society that the political sphere should be more transparent and more open. And it would be also my advice as somebody who, if I may say, is quite successful in political career. It pays off to be open and transparent. Sometimes I am confronted with some of my declarations, but it is good, I think, the proper thing in democracy to play with open cards. And it applies to COVID, which is the second question. Well, COVID is a stress test on many fronts and in many things. And we have an agreement now, the strategy to bring the trustworthy and reliable information to the people in more streamlined way, rather than let the people being somehow over-flooded by disinformation. And this mechanism more or less works. We are detecting the COVID disinformation. We have some mechanism with the platforms agreed that the authoritative content will be prioritized. Authoritative content is the first and last time, I hope, I am using this term. Yeah, we understand the difference. For COVID time, we need to have a reference point from where the reliable and trustworthy content is coming to us. And it's the health sector. I speak here about health authorities. So in this COVID crisis, I am able to admit that there might be some arbiters of the truth, but we desperately need somebody to give the information and not to let the people being misled by disinformation, which can cost lives even, and of course can do harm to health. For the vaccination, we have to speed up even this system, because we are all dependent on the success of the vaccines. Yeah, I am not epidemiologist, but I am a humble listener of those who understand the topic. If the researchers say the vaccine is our only hope, then we have to do everything to convince the people that the vaccination is the way out of the crisis. And of course, at the same time, to have absolute guarantee that we have the vaccines certified for European Union, which are absolutely safe. Yeah, and the whole thing here is circulating around one thing, one word, and this is trust. We need more trust. And I believe more trust can be achieved by not lying. This is the end of the story, I am afraid.
As easy as that. A final question, if I may, because we're entering our final few minutes. I appreciate we're slightly rushing you through some quite big topics here, but I'm trying to get in as many people from our audience as possible. There's quite a number of questions about the sections in the plan about citizen participation and civic space. So we have Asia Karakova from the European Citizen Action Service. We have Carlotta Besossi from Civil Society Europe, Linda Ravel from Civil Liberties Union for Europe, as well as colleagues from European Partnership for Democracy and the Open Government Network from Europe, all asking essentially the same thing. Great that that is in there in the plan. What can be done in kind of concrete terms again to take this forward? Asia, for example, makes a suggestion that maybe it would be good to have a compendium not only of cybersecurity and e-voting measures, but of the citizen participation that you note is so important. But a kind of cluster of concerns, as I say, around the need more actively to bring civil society in, and also perhaps to look at ways of protecting civil society when we know that many CSOs are actually under quite severe threat at the moment from governments.
Well, this plan seeks to not to let the authoritarian regimes come again in Europe, if I simplify that. And for me, EU is the antidote of authoritarian system. And you know, I was grown in such system half of my life. But what the dictators fear, it's independent judge, independent media, and active people. Yeah, the dictators need a crowd. They don't need people. We need people. We need people who want to have their voice heard, and not only in elections. I will never belong to the politicians who say, let the people come in 4 years to cast their vote and be silent in the meantime. That's why it's so vital. And thank you for the questions on this, because this is exactly what we have to do and what we have to pay attention to to enhance the active participation of the people. We have to do it on all levels. On European level, for us, openness and transparency, European citizens initiatives, which are now can be quicker and easier to be submitted to the institutions. Very wide public consultation. We are doing a lot of new things to attract the attention of the people to European topics. But what's more important even, to do the same at local and national level. And I started with local, because at the local level, the people, it's fantastic that in some municipalities, the people are widely and intensively engaged in the decision making of the city halls. And these are the things which should be promoted. I don't know if by the money. It should be promoted by the approach of the politicians, that they want to hear the voices of the people. And if not, then the voters have a chance to replace those people. I am finishing with a revolutionary sentence, but
That's democracy. Well,
you
yes.
know how I mean it. Of course, we are going to fund a lot of programs. Horizon, Erasmus, cultural and creative sector, a lot of funding through the values program. But instead of enumerating the financial support, and also cohesion policy could be used to increase the interest of the people and participation. Instead of remunerating all these financial instruments, I wanted to share with you how important I see this is. All the evil things which happened in the recent past in Europe happened with the blessing of passive people, passive majority. Yeah? And this is a memento we have to have in mind. Finish.
Thank you, Vice President. We have indeed run out of time, and I appreciate you have to move on to other things. So thank you for your time. I have had to be fairly selective with the questions, but we'll perhaps try and liaise with your team and get back to those people who've asked questions we haven't had time to cover. So apologies to members of the audience for that. As a kind of summary conclusion, for what it's worth from my side, it seems from the reactions we've been getting coming in, you have a reasonably receptive audience out there who appreciates the progress that has been made in the plan, but is also conscious that there's a long way to go. And as you said, this is the very kind of deeply political challenges that lie ahead in implementing the plan. So with that, we close. Thank you to you again for taking the time. Hopefully it will be useful to you and your team as you think through the challenges. And thanks again from my side to colleagues in Carnegie, European Partnership for Democracy and the Open Government Network for putting this conversation together. And thank you to everyone who joined us in the audience.
Thank you.